which I entitled Remembering Leo. And I want to do two things. I want to actually recollect some things, but mainly I want to ask a question: why should we remember Leo? And perhaps between us we can come to an answer. There were already some answers in the film, there were some answers in the things that have been said, but there may be more to it. I think it's something which is worth discussing. So let me start by mentioning some people to whom we owe a great deal, talking about pioneers. And in particular, I've picked out John Symonds. John Symonds was the person, Wrangler from Cambridge. Wrangler is a first-class mathematician from Cambridge, hired by Lyons in the 1920s. And his job was really to try to reorganize business processes to make the company effective and efficient. And he rose to be one of the few people outside the family who became a director of the company. But it was John Symonds who in the 1930s, I think 1931, founded an office called Systems Research, something which was totally novel in those days. And it is he who sent two other people, Thomas Thomson, called TRT, and Oliver Standingford to the United States, as we've heard, to find out about what had happened in the war years in terms of business processes which we could learn from, which Lyons could learn from. Lyons, by that time, was already a very progressive, smart company, as has been noted, very innovative, doing many new things in the way they organize their offices. The Thomson and Standingford said there was nothing really of interest, but they came across computers. And they saw that computers had the possibility. They saw that this was a way of possibly dealing with the huge, huge number of very low-value transactions, which were the mainstay of the Lyons business. A cup of tea, a bug, that kind of thing. Each one had to be accounted for. And they saw computers. They sketched to themselves what a computer to do that kind of job would look like as against the computers they were shown. And they sketched how such an application would actually look on a computer, what it would do. And they heard from Goldstein at Princeton that in the UK, computers were already being built. And I mentioned particularly Manchester, and in Cambridge, in particular the Cambridge ADSEC project. And Thomson and Standingford came home, wrote a report, and that report is prescient. It's one of these things which needs to be preserved. And I would love to see that report, which is still in existence, digitized so that that could be available for everybody. And that report suggested a number of ways in which Lyons could get into computers. And one of the ways was to build it themselves, perhaps with the help of one of the computers being built here. And they went, amongst other things, to Wilkes and Hartley at Cambridge, and agreed that this would be a way of doing it. Symonds drove this project through the board, an enormous achievement. As Ernest says, a very courageous act. But perhaps it was courageous because they didn't know what they were letting themselves in for. They didn't know what they were letting themselves in for. They didn't know how complicated it would be to achieve that.
May I just tell you a word about Symonds?
Yes.
He was had a brilliant mind, always thought things ahead. One day we were having an early morning meeting at 9 o'clock, and one member of the staff, who was always late, charged in just at 9 o'clock and said to Symonds, sorry sir, I'm late. And Symonds said, you're not late, Barnes, you merely prevented us from starting early. It's absolutely typical of the way the mind worked.
He also wrote a book called Leo and the Managers in 1962, which is a good read. The next person on the list is John Pinkerton. John Pinkerton was a genius engineer who was hired by Lyons recommended by Wilkes at Cambridge, and who led the Leo team. He was the kind of man, he had no side at all. He could take an idea and transform it into reality. His skill was taking ideas and turning them into practical ideas, but not in a narrow sense. He saw where this fitted into the world at large. He saw this as not, I'm designing a particular circuit, I'm designing a circuit because that circuit does so in the context of Lions tea shops, perhaps. So he saw much further. Then the other person is David Kaminer, who became head of programming and systems. David Kaminer had been head of this office which I mentioned earlier, systems research. And he was another genius, and I think he can be called perhaps has been called, the inventor of systems engineering. He's the one who had a meticulous mind. He could go through the detail. He saw the detail, and he could see from the pattern of the detail how one could change things, how one should change things for the better. He had a volatile temper. I think we all remember something being thrown at us by David Kaminer when we made a mistake. His standards, he insisted on his standards. I can see him now, what he would be doing if he saw what was happening in the National Health Service with computers. He would throw more pencils. These were the people. And not forgetting, of course, the people of Cambridge, Maurice Wilkes and Douglas Hartley, whose praises have been sung elsewhere, and Sir Maurice Wilkes, who recently passed away, of course. Now, turn my attention to remembering Leo. Well, for a long time, throughout the 50s and 60s, perhaps 70s, and certainly 60s, Leo had a reputation and was extremely well known, at least in the United Kingdom. All the star companies, Dunlops, Imperial Tobacco, Smith & Nephew, you name them, you name the star companies of this company, came to Leo to see what we were doing. It became such an interest was roused that Lions decided to form a subsidiary company to build computers for all these people who were interested. We did service bureau jobs for Ford Motor Company. We did their payroll as a service job and a machine at Cadby Hall, or Hartley House. We did jobs for Richard Chops, for Dorothy Perkins, for various stockbrokers, a huge range of jobs. And of course we sold machines to all these biggest companies, including some of the biggest government offices. So at that time we were known. And then the British computer industry, in a sense, hit America, or America hit the British computer industry. IBM, which had had a market sharing agreement with Hollerith for many, many years, that agreement came to an end. IBM came here, came with their massive marketing, with their massive research budgets, and really the British computer industry had to rethink how it was going to develop. As a result of that, many smaller computer companies in the UK were merged. Leo became part of English Electric. Lions decided that they had invested enough in this, they were having troubles elsewhere. They got out of the business, and gradually Leo was absorbed in all the bigger companies, and gradually Leo was forgotten. I recently saw an encyclopedia of computing history, only written in 2004, and Leo got one line in an appendix. When Eric Schmidt gave his McTaggart lecture earlier this year, he noticed what the pioneering efforts had been, but that who knew about it? It had been forgotten. So, in a sense, what we are talking about today is remembering Leo. But why should we remember Leo? Well, there may be a number of reasons. It could be nostalgia. There's a virtue in nostalgia. We like to remember stories of past glories, and it raises our morale as a country to say we did these things. But it doesn't get us very much further. Nevertheless, nostalgia is a reason. Or it could be to provide material for present and future historians to understand how what is probably the most transforming technology for a long time that we've had, and its applications actually developed. And future historians are certainly going to be interested in that. And we need to find a way of remembering what actually happened. Or maybe that there are lessons to be learned for future practitioners, to learn lessons from the Leo approach and from Leo's achievement, and also from Leo's failures, where we went wrong, because it wasn't a smooth path all the way to success. There were a number of failures, there were a huge number of successes. And successes were not with Leo, but also with Leo's people who used Leo computers. We were at the cutting edge everywhere. So I want to leave this at this moment with the question: what can we do as a group, all of us, to try to ensure that the memory is not lost, that it's available for future historians, and that we can actually learn the lessons? It's no good just saying they were successful. What are lessons to be learned? What actually are the lessons? And how are we going to take those lessons and actually make use of them? And that, I think, is a challenge that faces us today. So that's why I want to leave it. Thank you very much.